This is The Radio Station, a podcast about the radio industry with hosts Dr. Lynn O'Kelly and Dr. Rob Quick, presented by Routledge.
We don't need another Howard Stern. Wolfman Jack is long dead. Okay.
Those kinds of things where you implement your own personality, your unique voice, that's what people like to hear.
When I do have, those students who may know a little bit about commercial radio, they'll come on non-commercial like, well, we really can't do that, or no, we don't have commercials, but we have sponsorships. So I would love to see a part of the book to where we are looking at FCC rules and regulations.
The number one question I get from my radio students is, I don't know what a bit should be. And I'm like, go to Meyer, you're going to get 6 bits out of a trip to the grocery store.
I was replaced with weekend weather by an AI voice doing the weather. It's happening to people, whether it's on a larger scale or a smaller scale.
I know that unless they are 65 years old plus, they're not calling radio stations anymore.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast for the radio station, 11th edition. We are so glad you're here for this third edition of the podcast. I'm Dr. Len O'Kelly. As always, Dr. Rob Quick is with me. And Rob, we are going back to Vegas for another episode here.
Yeah, so we have some unfinished business. If you remember in our last episode, we brought to you the responses of the people who were in our session in Vegas. And it was really quite exciting, and it was actually really interesting to hear what they had to say on the question of whether or not radio is dead. But this time, we had a far more interesting question as regards the book and what people want to see.
And we will head back to Las Vegas right now and hear what's on the minds of educators. So the other question we really wanted to get from you today, we've got ideas for what we think should be in the podcast, but we also really want this podcast to be a companion to a radio textbook, which means how will it serve students? So what are the things that you as educators, those working with this next generation that we're trying to cultivate, what are the subjects that we should be featuring? What are the things that go beyond a traditional textbook? Who should we track down and chat with?
Yeah, please think about what we should be covering, and we'll start here again, yeah.
Evan Weirig, Grossmont College, San Diego, Griffin Radio. The aspect of developing a unique personality and good content, okay? The AI is taking over. You hear the same voice over everything. Hello, and I am doing this, and they can't even pronounce the right names anyway. But the aspect of how do you develop a good personality that's yours, okay, and that you can own. We don't need another Howard Stern. We don't need Wolfman Jack is long dead, okay. Going back to the corporate model, the people in San Diego, if you talk too much, we can't sell enough advertising, But the thing is that we've lost the hometown spin, if you will, the familiar voice that we listen to in the morning or what have you. How do you develop the student to and that was so-and-so and this is such and such, Well, yeah, let's talk a little bit about more, try to read the trades, what have you. But how can we develop that into something that's going to be entertaining and possibly integrated into their own podcast?
I think that's very important because I think I'm laughing because I'm thinking back when I was working in LA and I wanted to be on radio over there. But one thing that the news director always said, he's like, you have to sound LA then. And I sound too Jersey, like this is a water bottle for me, right? So...
What's going on?
You say you guys. But it's like water and just all those kinds of things. And he's like, he would see me in the hallway, he'd be like, water. I'm like, okay, whatever. It was really hard to pronounce for a while. But things like that are important because, for me, I did think though, I was like, okay, if I did want to be on air in LA, I had to sound like a little bit more of that area because like, hey, I'm roaming around the streets of LA. But at the same time, I realized that, part of my personality is that I am from Jersey. So what I did to implement that when I was on KFI, I did a segment all about pork roll or Taylor ham, which some of you might not even know what that is in here, which is mind-blowing to me. But people in LA that lived in Jersey that were a transplant called in, like so many people called in because they knew about this battle. And so like those kinds of things where you implement your own personality, your unique voice, to radio stations, podcasts, that kind of thing. That's what people like to hear. And so that's, to your point, 100%. I think that's very, very important. And I actually think I have a good person that could be a good guest for that as well, which is awesome.
I wrote a book about this, which was delighted to, they won the textbook award this year for BEA. And the whole point was, I just found we're putting our students in front of microphones and saying, right, go, create compelling content. And I'll not show this for you in 20 seconds. I just realized our students aren't prepared to go and create anything like compelling content because they don't know who they are. And so my whole Finding a Voice in audio, radio, podcast production book is about, and that's why I'm pleased it won an award, because it's very unconventional. I've had people read the book who say, this is kind of wacky, because the first part of the book is, don't record anything for anyone to hear. Record on your cell phone and don't let anyone hear this. And answer these questions. What is your earliest childhood memory? Who made the biggest impact on your life? Who taught you between right and wrong, and what's worth fighting for? And so they have to have a grasp of their own self-identity before we can put them in front of a microphone. Once they know who they are, then they can communicate much more effectively, and they'll also avoid imposter syndrome when they do finally get their gig, instead of thinking, I'm not good enough, so I took that question very, very seriously.
Yeah. The number one question I get from my radio students is, I don't know what a bit should be. And I'm like, go to Meyer, you're going to get 6 bits out of a trip to the grocery store. You just observe what's going on, right? What happens, and you're like, can I talk about that? Yes, and please do, because your perspective is unique. That's what's going to be, that's how you make trailing. I mean, fall, trip while you do it, but that's how you start to make content that's people want to hear.
Name and school again.
Derek Wood, WDRDL at Ashland University. I think an episode should exist about AI. Len, you mentioned being replaced, by AI in some regard. I was replaced with weekend weather by an AI voice doing the weather. It's happening to people, whether it's on a larger scale or a smaller scale. But we're never going to be able to move without AI being a part of the conversation. So I don't necessarily have a guest in mind, but okay, well, whatever the guest is, a conversation about how AI is going to continue being a part of this business model.
How can we win?
Exactly. How can we win?
So I don't know if you've heard of AI Ashley.
Yeah.
She's one of my former students. She's actually contributed to our book.
No way.
Yep, she's in the book.
Yeah, and she's an interesting take on it, because it's, on the one hand, she was sort of, proud to be a part of it. On the other hand, she also realizes, this could be problematic if in the wrong hands. But it's not going away. You're right. The dinner I was at last night, we were talking about Claude. And I like to say that Claude makes ChatGPT look like a toy if you've never played with it. It's frightening. It's going to be around.
Name and school again.
AJ Matthews, Pikes Peak State College, Colorado Springs, Colorado. Definitely a segment involving connectivity via social media. I bring this up because my son's a competitive baseball player. I took him down to Phoenix last year. We're driving around. I was listening to a station, and there was a jock on doing a full audience interaction bit, and my crap detector was on high alert. It sounded very staged, because I know that unless they are 65 years old plus, they're not calling radio stations anymore all that much. So the big push where I operate a radio station with my students is connect with them the way they want to connect with you. So talking about social media interaction, whether it be, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, X, what have you.
I may have shared this story last year, but there's a question I ask on the final exam in my radio class. It's, what's your takeaway from this course? And year before last, I had a student write, I feel confident enough to use my phone to order a pizza now. And I thought, do people not do that anymore, or how old am I? Right? But you're right. I mean, reach the audience in the way the audience wants to be reached. I think there's some people we could all know for that. Yeah.
We have 7 minutes. Any other points that would like to be made?
Ventura Hill, KEOM, Mesquite School District.
For me, for my students, it is, I would say, when we get to the FCC rules and regulations, that's something where I know it's not always as black and white, where we are a non-commercial radio station, and what the kids are hearing in the car is commercial radio. So they will come on and they may try to do certain things, like we don't do CTAs on non-commercial versus commercial. So when I do have, those students who may know a little bit about commercial radio, they'll come on non-commercial, like, well, we really can't do that, or no, we don't have commercials, but we have sponsorships. So I would love to see a part of the book to where we are looking at FCC rules and regulations, also have a large demographic of students where English is not their first language. And I would say I see a lot of strength of students who can run my board very well, but they may not can deliver the news. So maybe other careers besides as being an on-air talent, if we can look at as far as if it's a board op or other careers that we are now seeing, a social media manager. One of the things I remember when I worked at Tom Joyner, that as he was going on, there's a young lady who sits there next to him. She has social media pulled up, and she's responding to social media. She's creating pages. And so she was getting paid to do that as a social media manager. And I have a lot of kids who spend a lot of their hours on TikTok and other things of that nature. So maybe looking at other careers instead of highlighting what's on-air talent.
One more here. Was there a hand?
Yes.
I'm Dorothy Blaine from the University of North Texas. We are a Hispanic serving and a minority serving institution. And and I live in Texas. So one of the questions I have with regards to podcasting is reaching audiences that are far more diverse. And the language issue is a very valid point. What are we doing there? I think that would be a very interesting podcast given the changing demographics in America.
We do need to do that. Yeah, we need to do a better job.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Big thanks again to everybody who was a part of our session at BEA in Las Vegas. It's given us a lot to think about and a lot to work on. And that's very exciting because over the next several episodes of this podcast, we'll start to unpack some of these issues in a little more detail. Some of the things that you heard people talking about, what should be between the pages of the book coming out, and some of the other things that are affecting the radio industry writ large. There'll be things we'll be talking about in the next few episodes.
And the other thing is that we're going to be having some really interesting interviews with people from all aspects of the industry. Tim Craig and myself interviewed one of the upcoming rising country music stars. We're going to be examining all forms of radio, all genres and formats, and a lot of the issues that people brought up in Vegas we're going to be exploring. So I think this podcast, which is exploring really every facet of the radio station, the radio industry, is going to go places.
This podcast is connected to the radio station, published soon by Rutledge, probably coming in early 2026. We've got a few more adjustments to make. So much great feedback, so many things we want to make sure get into this copy of the book before it gets into your hands.
Yeah, and just about that. So I think we can share with our listeners that we had a really productive meeting with our editor from Rutledge in Vegas, who basically said, yep, keep going, keep doing this. Very happy that we're doing the podcast. So I thought that was a very encouraging meeting.
Yes, I agreed.
So thank you for listening, and we'll catch up with you for the next episode.
Remember, radio has a tremendous future. We're glad you've decided to be part of it.
You have been listening to the Radio Station Podcast with co-hosts Dr. Lynn O'Kelly and Dr. Rob Quick. The team includes Dr. Tim Craig, Dana Schaefer, and Peter Creighton. Thanks to producers Rob Quick and Lance Liguez. The credits narrator is me, Patricia Saunders.